And welcome into the Gaming Discourse. I'm Tyler Frater alongside Richard Day the Cruz.
Connor's gone. Let's talk about video games.
Chief Engineer, Lieutenant Commander Connor Frater, who, as Richard just reported, breaking news, is not in the building today. Connor actually went to Disneyland. I'm giving out private information here, so I hope he doesn't mind. But this is according to Connor. The Rise of the Resistance ride is the best Disney thing, or is the best Star Wars thing Disney has made, according to him. So,
candid, statement about a personal thing. When I went to Disneyland for my honeymoon with my wife.
Okay.
And I had not gone since I was a teenager. I've only been there twice.
Okay.
So my honeymoon was the second time. The first time I went was awful, and I was like, Disneyland sucks. Why do people like it? The second time I went with my wife, it was some of the most fun I've ever had. One of which being the Star Wars ride that they had there. I don't think they have it anymore. Star Tours?
I don't think so. I think that was changed.
No joke, because there's several different scenarios they have on Star Tours, I think.
I couldn't tell you.
Anyways, whatever one I saw, I began to tear up and cry. It was one of the coolest, best experiences I've ever had. And awesome. I've told you before, I'm not super, I love Star Wars.
Sure.
But Star Wars to me, and no offense to you, no offense to anybody.
Oh boy.
Star Wars to me is lightsabers and move things with your mind. I do like the lore and stuff like that, but I'm not too serious about it. But that was, for me, it was a very, very cool experience, and I enjoyed the hell out of it, because right before you go to it, you're walking a pathway and you see the droids are just hanging out and they're doing stuff. And it's like,
sure.
These are really cool, But anyways, sorry. So I have no doubt that is one of the coolest things he's ever seen. So that's what makes, what I was just comparing it to.
Star Wars because it's so malleable, right?
Yeah.
Is you can have a story like Fallen Order, where it's this weird, sad story about somebody rediscovering his past and guilt and PTSD and all that. And you can also have a story that is a lot of fun and silly, and you have villains that you can root for. So there's all kinds of people often, there's the thing Star Wars, Star Trek, whatever.
Whatever.
I've never been one of those people, and I don't really think those kind of people exist. Maybe outside of a few message boards here and there.
It's blown up to proportion.
Yeah, it's more of a joke now than anything else. But that's the thing about Star Trek, and right now Paramount's really pushing Star Trek, and they have a Star Trek kids show on Nickelodeon and stuff. But that's the thing that I just don't know if you can do with Star Trek. And maybe you can, but I just don't feel it's as malleable
effective
as Star Wars, because it just its characters are different, its setting is different. And I don't think that without watching a ton of it, Star Wars: The Clone Wars sort of fits with the movies, but I don't know if you can make a kid show and have it fit with some of the Star Trek stuff that you see. Yeah. But anyway, all I'm saying is that Star Wars that's how it is you have all kinds of people who view it tons of different ways, and there's something that everybody likes in there somewhere. So that's an interesting testament to that fact.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
What was I going to talk about?
Well, we were doing the intro and we were talking about
we're doing a podcast, aren't we?
Yeah. Connor was gone, so whatever you say after Connor being gone, follow us on Facebook and
August 4th, 2021. We do have news to get into, but let's talk about games.
Yes.
Let's talk about video games.
Yeah.
Have you been playing video games?
Yeah, yes, kind of.
Okay.
I'm playing more of Tales of Arise, and I know last week I didn't talk about it. Shut up.
We got feedback that people like banter. Shut the fuck up, Richard. Is that good enough banter?
No, it's not. Please.
No one likes JRPGs, Richard.
They don't.
Filthy human piece of garbage.
You had to do it twice.
there's our banter.
Oh, man. All right, so 30 some hours into this game. I'm playing it, and the goal of the game, at least that they give you up until this point, is to defeat the 5 lords who hold on to this orb. That each orb is tied to its certain element, so fire, water, leaf, whatever. You know what? Let me back up a little bit. Every Tales game, a lot of JRPGs, you'll do an opening intro sequence, and then the anime cutscene will play. Like, you know, it's actually animated, and it was the Tales series does this. Like every single Tales game does it. And
Persona did that, didn't it? Did Persona 5 do that?
I know they do it before you press start.
Okay.
Like there's a
little intro video.
Yeah, but they do have animations inside of like here and there. And Tales of Arise does as well. But Tales of Arise specifically, like a lot of their cool imagery comes from those anime sequences, and people remember those a lot. But so I played the opening sequence, and they gave me the anime intro, and I was like, cool. So now that plays every time before I press start. So 30 hours in, I defeat the final lord.
Hooray!
And, well, yeah. Of course, something happens.
Oh no!
Not good. And they do the cliche. One of the characters goes like, is it over? And one of the other characters says, obviously, no, it's only just begun. Hard cut, completely brand new anime sequence. And I'm like, are you kidding me, man? Like, not in a bad way, but just I was actually kind of like, okay, all right, this is like cool, whole new anime sequence. Which this anime sequence was not. It's kind of terrible to put in this spot in the game because it shows you stuff that you're going to be doing.
Oh, it's one of the look aheads.
And it shows you characters what they look like a little later, which it's not like a time skip, but it's just like some of them have slightly different outfits or something, which is fine because that's the end goal. Like it's going to be a hat. Like everything's gonna take care of itself throughout the story. So it's not like spoiler, but it is kind of like, okay, all right, I get it. Thanks, guys. So there was that, and I thought that they handle some things very interestingly. The whole aspect of there being two races, and of course one rules over the other one. There's a lot of racism, slavery, and stuff like that for those. And there's the final lord. He basically brainwashed all of the people, and basically they were fed to the astral energy to power him up more. And you save everyone, but unfortunately everyone in the village or in the town is still brainwashed, and they're slowly breaking out of it. So you'll encounter people who their speech patterns aren't quite there yet. And some of them are still taking orders if they get ordered.
Oh, okay.
So
interesting.
So some people are like already some people who have snapped out of it are abusing that and stuff. So you have to deal with that a tiny bit. It's not like a huge part of the story, but it's just like side missions. I thought that was interesting, but there was also something else that happened when you help one of the main villagers who comes up to you and asks for help. He begins to, by the end of the quest, realize what has happened and realize that this race has enslaved them for like 300 years and they're angry about it, which is very, justified. But your characters are trying to, not have the cycle of revenge like continue, and stuff like that. And it's like, no, we can, we're all different races. We're working together right now. We can do this, let's go on. But they have this really interesting conversation. It's unfortunately shorter than I wanted it to be, but it's when you leave the village, it's like, hey, are they going to be okay? And it's like, well, we'll leave people who want to continue on and rebuild with them. But what happens when they remember what happened to them? What happens when they decide that they want to when the thought process of, no, I want to get revenge? Like, what happens when that comes back? And you don't get that answer. You're just kind of left with it.
Interesting.
But I thought
making you engage with maybe on a more thematic level there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And unfortunately, it doesn't. It's as good as it can be for an anime because anime still has like very cliche ways of presenting this stuff. So although I can see what they're trying to do and it doesn't hit very emotionally, but I understand it, and I do think it's interesting that they are the storytelling aspect is getting better and better. So I've been playing a lot of Arise, and I'm trying to beat it. I should have beat it a while ago, but now it's October, and October I've been trying to the last 2 years create I'm losing all my words tonight. Tradition of playing every Castlevania game in October for Halloween. And I started playing Castlevania Circle of the Moon the other night, which is part of the Advanced Collection, Castlevania Advanced Collection, which just released. And Castlevania Circle of the Moon is my least favorite Castlevania.
Oh, no.
And I remember not liking it when I played it when it came out a long time ago. And I started playing it again. 10 minutes into it, I was like, ugh. I was like, man, like it's not terrible. It's not like a terribly made game or anything, but there are just weird stuff. Like you can't run like at the start of the game until like 15, 20 minutes into it.
When you run,
like you can't dash. Like you're just walking like really slow.
Interesting.
And so you can't run until you get the dash boots, and then you can run. And it's like, oh, okay, great. But you run a little too fast for a normal character, because there's always a run speed that feels good, but in this one there's like a run speed where it's just a tiny bit too fast, and it's kind of like, oh, all right. Like if you see an enemy, like you try to stop, you might run into him, and it's like, oh. And your character, some reason, has like super boots on, because when you jump, you're like, you know, you also have a type of good jump that with platforming games, like, oh yeah, that jump feels good. That jump feels good.
As
and
opposed
you know
to
when
one
a
that's
jump,
like super floaty, like Halo Combat Evolved floaty.
Oh yeah, wow! I completely forgot Halo had that type of jump. But yeah, it's like he's in Mega Man, and I know you probably won't get this reference to other people. When you're in an underwater level, your jump height and your jump speed is doubled when you're underwater.
Sure, yeah.
Because so it's like he's underwater.
Oh,
and he's just like,
interesting.
So it's like, oh, wow. Yeah, so it's just very unruly at the moment. And they have this card-based system called the DSS, where certain enemies, not all enemies, certain enemies will drop a kind of a tarot card, and you can equip that card, and it allows you to do different things. It's all based on chance, and the chances are not good, my friend.
Oh, no.
So if you want a really cool ability, you have to sit there and, like, if there's a zombie enemy and he happens to have a card, like, you have to like go into the room, kill him. No, he didn't get the card. Go out the room,
come back.
Yeah,
oh, jeez.
And but thankfully, there's a rewind feature in this advanced collection,
okay.
So I can just like tap R2.
And just keep
for like a second or two right before I kill him, and just so. And
it's like Scully, but instead of him saying, "Hey, boyo," he's like, "Oh, please make it stop!"
Yeah,
as you're just beating up this one zombie.
So what sucks is that there's, of course, an achievement to get every card, and me being the person who loves Castlevania, I gotta get it. So, but thank God that reverse. Or the reverse option is there, but I've just been doing those two, but enjoying them still. I think by the end of it, I'll probably warm up to Castlevania Circle of the Moon, but as of right now, it's still not on my like favorites list.
Okay,
for those games.
Interesting. So I've actually been playing a lot of different stuff. I'm reviewing Industria right now, which we talked about last week.
Yeah,
came out last week. I'm reviewing that. I think I'm going to wait until next week to talk about it.
That's fine.
I am reviewing another game called In Sound Mind. Is it what's the phrase?
I think I've heard that.
In Sound Mind? Sound Mind, Sound Body. I think it's In Sound Mind is the name of the game, because that's a phrase.
That's what came up here.
Yeah. So In Sound Mind is a really weird horror comedy.
Wow.
And it looks really interesting. I'm reviewing that as well, and that's one that I will talk about more next week, because I've only played a few hours, but even within a few hours, it's really made me interested. But the two games that I've played a lot of these past weeks or whatever, Cyberpunk and Resident Evil 8. So Cyberpunk, I say this every week, when Cyberpunk is good, it is just so damn freaking good. Uh-huh. And you can see the vision for, like, when you're in a scenario and you're talking with characters and music starts and stops, you can really see how they really got close to taking like an open world action RPG and storytelling to a whole new level. Mm. But man, it sucks when those moments are broken up because there's like a little silly bug or something like that. And in some ways, it doesn't bother me. I guess what I'm more bothered by is like where would the game be now if it was released in this coming December, rather than, you know, something like that. But I'm playing through it so I started a different save, and I played through it on a street kid or whatever origin story, which I think is the origin story that makes more sense and is better.
I think so too.
I started my previous playthrough as Corpo, thinking the idea would be you're someone who was evil, became disillusioned, and now you're out to tear down the system.
Yeah,
and it's like, no, you were just in a corporation, you got screwed over, and now you're just...
Now you have a couple different lines here or there.
Yeah,
and that's
as opposed to a street kid, which is the more natural, like you're someone who grew up on the streets, and then you got into really bad stuff, and now you enter the adventure, and so it makes more narrative sense. I think Keanu Reeves, I think this comes down to directing.
Yeah.
And I don't have any expertise to say this, except that except my untethered intuition. Because I think certain actors, maybe when it comes to mocap and voice stuff, it's a different type of acting. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe it requires a different type of directing and understanding like where you're at in a scene or something like that. And I have no acting experience, but like when you watch the guy who played Kratos, I don't remember his name. Christopher. He plays Kratos, right? And when you watch him in that making of documentary, and he's all in the mocap suit and stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And for an actor, I assume that must be difficult, because when you're acting in a movie or on stage, you're in costume, you're talking to actual people, and the emotion that you make on your face is the emotion that you know is going to be translated, as opposed to you're sort of delivering something that has to make its way into a game, right? Now, he did an amazing job. The Blades of Chaos scene is like one of the most legendary scenes in video game history. But I would love to hear, you know, one day when we have Keanu Reeves on the show, I would love to hear like, hey, what are the challenges about acting for a game? Because there are moments where Keanu Reeves' lines are just flat. But I don't think he's a bad actor.
Oh, yeah.
You know, but there are other times where his lines are like phenomenal. He's great. It's like, holy hell, he's so cool as Johnny Silverhand. And then he delivers a line, and it's like they got one take, and we're like, all right, that's good. Even though it was completely flat, you know, sometimes. And maybe that's just me. I don't know. But anyway, that comes to my mind. But another decision I made this time was, minor spoiler, Jackie's body. Right. Instead of, I sent it to the doctor. Mm-hmm. Instead of doing that, I sent it to his mother, which is the much more. And here's the thing about decision making, and I feel like CD Projekt Red did this with Witcher as well. When you get that choice, to me, it didn't feel like there was a correct choice or a wrong choice. Maybe their thought process is, if you knew Jackie well, if you read these things here and there, you would know this is what he would want you to do. Maybe that's their thought process. But in my mind, there isn't like a correct choice there. So the first time I went through the game, I picked to send his body to the Ripper Doc, Victor, right? This time, but knowing that, and how it nothing comes of it, and his mom just sort of calls you over the phone, and it's really sort of an unfulfilling thing. I sent his body to his mom. There's a whole quest that gets added if you do this, and it's really neat, and it humanizes his mom. His mom becomes not, instead of this character you just hear about, a character that you actually visit. And the first game my first playthrough, I didn't beat it, so you may visit her somewhere down the line. But we actually visit her, and there's like a quest, and she talks about Jackie, and then you go through Jackie's like apartment, and you study the stuff that he has and the person that he was, and it's like a whole different way of handling this character that just died, right? As opposed to the other way, which sort of just ends it, and then you're off running around Night City. Yeah. So on one hand, I understand that it's the player making the decision. On the other hand, the decision results in such a much more fulfilling emotional, like, emotional mission, quest, payoff, for Jackie as a character. That's something that's difficult about making games, because you want to give players decisions and you want their decisions to have consequences. But instead of feeling like I made a decision and I faced the consequences, I feel like I just got shortchanged by a video game. Because if I would have known that, I would have taken that route. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it would have been nice to know. I think I chose sending Body to the Ripper because if I remember correctly, it's been a while. There's a conversation that I think Jackie has with you about how when he left his mom for that last job, he did talk with her, and to them it already felt like that was going to be the last time like they saw each other. Like, I think
he does say
it's like implied that they already said goodbye.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I was nudged to send his body to the doc.
That sounds like a hint.
Yeah.
The hint that I took was there's a line that Jackie talks about, like Mama Wells doesn't want to see any of her boys in jail anymore or something like that. So I was like, okay, maybe that's a hint that Mama Wells has sort of accepted this. You don't need to send his body to her, you know? So I don't know. Anyway, not a nitpick, maybe more of a criticism. I don't know. I'm still enjoying Resident Evil 8. I want to talk about Resident Evil 8.
Let's do it.
All right. So I have come to the conclusion that Resident Evil needs to go back to third person.
Okay.
And here's why. There are so many. Resident Evil 8, first of all, I'm enjoying more than Resident Evil 7. And it does this. I don't know who the director is or if they have gone this way with the new director or what, but Resident Evil 8 does this amazing thing where they have little 15 second sequences in really cool set pieces. And it's over and over and over and over and over again. So you have the beginning of the game, which the first hour and a half of the game is just bonkers. It's just ridiculous.
It's very cool.
And then you go through the beginning of the game, a bunch of crazy stuff happens. Then you have to go through a cornfield thing, right?
Yes.
That's during the beginning. Anyway, really cool sequence, right? Then you are underground going through a dungeon. Really cool enemies you have to fight in this dungeon. Before the dungeon, there's a really neat sculpture where you have to figure out how to open the sculpture, and there's a secret door. And that whole it's just a room, but this one room is so freaking awesome.
It's very gorgeous.
So it does this thing where there are these little set pieces over and over and over again, and they execute it so well. And these set pieces are gorgeous. And I feel like in third person, you'd be able to take the entire thing in, right? As opposed to first person, where you're constantly turning the camera and looking at things. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
I feel like if you imagine Witcher, for example, Kaer Morhen is bigger and grander in third person because you just have more to look at and more to take in. As opposed to if it were first person, and instead of seeing Kaer Morhen, you're just seeing the door,
you have a cone.
and not the arch above it, and and the things to the side and left and right and stuff like that. So and I know that was a criticism of Cyberpunk as well. And that's not to say that I think first person is worse than third. I don't. I think there are situations where first is better than third. If Squad went to third person, I'd hate it. Right? Squad is a game that's best with first person. But I just feel like with Resident Evil 8, I always wish the camera was just capturing more, because there's so many cool little tiny things to see in this game as you go through it. I beat the first. The game came out this year, so I'll be a little vague. I beat the first major boss. It surprised me.
Okay.
But man, I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah.
And what was I was going to say something else. The controller for the PS5.
Oh, yeah.
So this is the first time where I'm playing a game, and no matter where I'm playing Resident Evil 8, I want the PS5 controller, because when you press down the triggers, it not only do the triggers feel different with different weapons, but you can sort of, with the pistol, you can aim it and you can press down the trigger and you can press it down about a fourth of the way and it stops, right? There's a hard limit there, right? And you press more and it shoots. But aiming becomes a whole lot easier if you press down to that
fourth point,
that stopping point with the pistol, because then all you have to do is just give it a little bit of juice and it shoots, as opposed to pulling the entire trigger. I'm not even sure how to describe it. It just becomes, it's like you have a little bit more control with the controller because your fingers are already poised and you barely have to move one of them to fire. And that makes aiming a little bit easier for me. So now every time I'm using the pistol to shoot at an enemy, I aim and then I press down on the trigger just a tad, and then I let go of it as soon as, I press down on it as soon as I have an enemy in a spot that I want to shoot. And that works with all the weapons. And I don't know if I'm the only person that plays like this.
You might be.
But I feel like it really helps with aiming.
Yeah, I just did it normal, left, right, but I didn't think about it too much. But I do. Resident Evil Village, Resident Evil 8, whatever you want to call it. Off the top of my head is probably the best game from a third party that has made use out of the controller.
Okay. Oh yeah. Okay.
Third party developer who has made good use of the controller. Granted, I have not played Metro Exodus yet.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
So yeah, that would be interesting. But yeah, like I mentioned before, Tales of Arise doesn't even use it. Which is fine. But and Ghost of Tsushima barely uses it.
Yeah.
But there's I don't know what you'd use it for. That's also a thing. But yeah, like Resident Evil, when if you're turning a little too fast, your controller will rumble in the direction that you passed something you could pick up.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
If you notice that, like in certain areas, if you pass something that you can interact with or pick up, it'll rumble, like your controller will rumble in the direction that it's in.
Interesting.
So, so that will be like, okay, cool, I can touch that. So yeah, it's very neat.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm enjoying Resident Evil 8 a lot more. And I think Resident Evil has always been sort of B horror. Horror movie, B whatever. And there have been some lines in this that I have audibly laughed at because it's just so I don't know, there's a scene where Ethan, so first of all, the game is about a man who survives a horror movie, and then a bunch of other random horror villains are like, we've heard of this guy who survived a horror movie. Let's see if he can survive our horror movie. It's hilarious.
So
it's kind of hilarious. It's like a character that survived Saw, and then this character gets transported to Hills Have Eyes sequel, and they're like, you survived Saw, but can you survive our franchise? It's hilarious.
Get you yet.
Yeah, exactly. And these villains who are like these old vampires call him Winters. Yeah. Like he's his last name, like he's James Bond or something. So that's hilarious. Some of the lines are hilarious. The thing that made me laugh though, first of all,
I know what's coming. I know what it is.
Ethan gets mutilated every 15 minutes. He gets stabbed, pierced, and it's to the point where it's just hilarious. Yes. This guy just can't he just can't get a break. But the funniest thing in the entire game, and this is a minor spoiler, right? At one point you go to grab a handle, and he gets his hand chopped off, and he looks at his hand, and he's like, "Oh my god!" You have to avoid a monster, whatever. So you make it back to the handle. Ethan's hand is still there, his right hand, and what's left is just the cut on his arm. So you pick up the hand, you go into this elevator. And he takes one of the healing things and dumps it on his arm and places his hand on, and like Luke Skywalker in Empire Strikes Back, he's like, "Oh, look at that, good as new." Okay, the funniest thing I've ever seen, maybe ever in any movie, video game, period. It made me laugh hysterically, and the game just sort of leans into that, and it's great. Yes. Another line that I loved is. There's the old lady that you keep encountering who's the facial animations out of this world.
Very good.
Terrifying. But she has like a staff, and she draws stuff, and she's crazy or laughs like she's crazy, whatever. Anyway, the first time Ethan walks up to her after the beginning of the game and seeing like the werewolf dudes and stuff, right? He walks up to her. Okay, so clearly this is not a normal person. If not, at least by the way she's dressed. Also because she has a staff that has human skulls hung all over it. And the first thing Ethan says to her is, "Hey, it's not safe out here." It's like, you would think by adding 2 and 2 here, Ethan would suspect this lady looks like she's right where she's supposed to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
His first line is, "Hey, it's not safe here," but that's nice of him. Anyway, so I'm excited to keep playing. It's hilarious, and I think I like this better than Resident Evil 7. Resident Evil 7 was cool. It just, I don't know, man.
Resident Evil 7 was, and not in a bad way, you get what you see. If that is that the phrase? No, but I was terrified at first of Resident Evil 7 when I played it.
Yeah.
About 2 hours in, I was just oh, let me do what you get used to it, and it's just like
it doesn't have the same humor about itself.
Yeah, there's some humor about it, but no, you're right.
This one is a little more, I think, on the nose with the funniness of it all.
Well, it went back to the ridiculous of what Resident Evil is. Like Resident Evil 4 is a very funny game. Like, I mean, you'll see yourself like, this month.
Yeah, when it comes out for
it's a funny game, and it's that's the, I guess, backbone of it ever since the first game. The bad voice acting and just kind of the B movie aspect of it.
Yeah,
I think that's why it's so far still right now. For me, I think Resident Evil is my game of the year so far still, just because I had so much fun with it, and it was just such an enjoyable game, and it is what it is, plain and simply, and I had a blast with it. So yeah, I can't wait to hear you talk about it more.
Yeah, I got past the first major boss. There's a couple other like minor bosses. First major boss, and now I'm out in some snowy area, and I have to go explore further. Mm-hmm. But I got the sniper rifle. The enemy design is so cool. You encounter these monsters that are like giant mosquito crow things with hoods on, and you can't really see their faces. You just see their like needle snout things. Those are really cool. The Guardian, the Drugar things that drags their weapons with them. Those are cool as hell. Yeah, I'm really excited to see what else the game throws at you. You understand the only thing I'm disappointed in is that there's really no way not to spoil this.
The particular character who sticks around.
Well, who doesn't?
Right, yeah.
That's probably the only thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, we won't say any more about that.
That's all right. We'll move on.
We want to give a massive shout out to the sponsors of this episode. They have been silently supporting us since the very beginning, and we felt it was time to give them some love. The like and share buttons have been at our side since episode 1 of the podcast. They can be found just beneath this episode. Please give them a click, it helps us greatly. If you're feeling lucky, click the bell icon to enter for a notification anytime we post new content. You may be surprised by what you get.
Sony has officially purchased, bought, added, whatever, Bluepoint Games. This was announced in a blog post where head of PlayStation Studios Herman Hulse said, quote, "With each of its projects, Bluepoint has raised the bar on console-defining visuals and gameplay, and the studio's vast expertise in world building and character creation will be a huge plus for future PlayStation Studios properties." Marco Thrush, who is the president of Bluepoint, told IGN, quote, "Our next project, we're working on original content right now. We can't talk about what that is, but that's the next step in the evolution for us. Our team is very highly experienced. Our team is a very highly experienced team. All of them come from original development. It's not like we're a bunch of developers that got trained up on making remasters and remakes. We have that original game development mindset in our hearts, and that's what we're now finally ready, with the support of Sony to push forward and show what we can do." End quote. Good for Bluepoint.
Yes. I think it'd be a big mistake if Sony didn't pick them up after all that they've done so far with obviously Demon's Souls, and they've done other smaller stuff like the Gravity Rush remaster, and I think they did the Uncharted Nathan Drake collection.
No, I don't know for sure.
Check that.
We'll just say it. But shout out to Colossus.
Oh yeah, duh.
Demon's Souls. And they also did they do the cutscenes for the Halo 2 remastered?
No, they didn't. That was some other CG studio.
Was that somebody else?
Yes.
That was Blur. Was it Blur?
I think it was Blur, yeah.
Oh, okay. Anyway. All right. That may have been. Anyway, we often talk about PlayStation and Xbox sort of.
It was Bluepoint.
That made the Halo 2?
Uncharted.
Oh, Uncharted. Okay.
Yeah.
PlayStation and Xbox sort of competing, right? And we're not really sure. It's an interesting time now, because if you asked Xbox who their main competitor is, would they say Sony? And I'm not sure about that answer. They may not say Sony.
Depends on who you ask at Xbox.
That's true. If you asked PlayStation, though, I feel like they would tell you that, oh yeah, Xbox is our main competitor, right? Because they are not in the same marketplace that Xbox has sort of expanded into, especially with their further integration into PC. Adding studios, on one hand, it's this big arms race, right?
Yeah, it does feel like that way. Because
they're picking up studios. They made that big deal with Xbox, made the big deal with Bethesda. Resogun. Housemarque, thank you. I couldn't think of Returnal there. I couldn't think of their most recent game for some reason, even though I played it for 1,000 hours. Housemarque was added by PlayStation not too long ago, and now Bluepoint. So, and they added a few smaller studios as well. And so, you know, we've always talked about PlayStation as a sort of more curated experience.
Yeah,
as Xbox is throwing on a wider net. But I feel like, I guess the point I'm trying to get to is, even though both of these big titans are buying up all these studios, and we can call it an arms race or whatever, it's interesting that something like this doesn't seem as relevant or impactful as it would have like 15 years ago, because today, with where you can put your game out and stuff like that, and how many smaller developers there are and whatnot, I'm not trying to say that these bigger studios are not as important, but it's just the entire games ecosystem is more accessible, right?
Yes.
So it doesn't feel as impactful than it would 10 or 15 years ago, because of how Microsoft has sort of changed with their approach with Xbox Game Pass and PC, and because you can get your games on a storefront in so many different ways now.
Yes.
So that's what I'm trying to say. That took me 15 minutes of roundabout discussion to get there, but we're there.
Yeah, we did hit a threshold, it seems like, of like, arguably, you know, in the early 90s, we were still in the pseudo infancy of video games. You know, you had tons of people trying to compete for a top spot. You had 3DO, Philips CDI, TurboGrafx, NES, SNES, Genesis. Only two survived, which were Sony and Nintendo. Then Microsoft comes in 2001. And then it just was those three guys. Nintendo very quickly, by 2006 with the Wii, we're just doing what we want.
Sure.
And then they just kind of started going crazy. You know, they finally found their rhythm with the Switch, which is great. But then you have these two, like Xbox and PS2, and they started two halves, you know. They started grabbing up particular games, making exclusive deals, because there was a point in the PS3 360 era where third-party games were developed almost exclusively on 360 first, because it was easier than PS3.
Yeah.
But the PS3 games we started to see became blockbusters, you know, with Metal Gear Solid 4 and Uncharted, Infamous, et cetera. So we got to the point where Xbox and PlayStation were big enough that there was a certain market that they couldn't grab in the early 2010s, and that was PC. Microsoft found the way first with, Microsoft is Microsoft, so they already know how to deal with PC, so they started grabbing PC.
You would think they could have done it earlier.
Yes, you could have. Well,
and they tried.
They tried, definitely. So I think what happened is Microsoft started to move, obviously with Game Pass and other stuff, started to move in on the PC front. And look what's happened within the last year or two. Sony has dramatically ramped up their interest in PC and their releases on PC. So it is like an arms race, you know, particularly for this final like aspect of audience they want to grab.
Yeah.
But Microsoft may take it further, because they have the cell phone market, and the tablet
and
market,
XCloud.
and XCloud, and Sony's still a bit behind. I mean, I doubt most PC players know that you can do PS Now on your PC.
Yeah.
And nobody, how many people know that you can play?
They don't push PS Now very, very, very hard.
They don't, and they could if they wanted to. They definitely could if they wanted to. But.
So all right, I had a thought, but it is gone now. Oh, so we always talk about if there's any pressure on Sony levied by Microsoft to be more malleable with how they put games out there and whatnot. And them putting games on PC could be evidence of that. That it's like, hey, you know, Microsoft isn't going to rely on their Xbox so much. Is that and because they're putting games in different places, that means people don't have to, you know, go to a console. They could go to a PC or whatever. And so could this be PlayStation sees this and says, all right, well, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing right now, which is these huge first party titles that are going to knock the socks off of the industry, you know, every couple of years or whatever. Now, what's interesting is Housemarque and I said this about Housemarque and Bluepoint. Now, I think Bluepoint, because they if I remember correctly, like they made like the Demon's Souls remake like from the ground up, right?
If I remember correctly, yes.
Removed from the ground up, because I don't know if they used original source code. All I'm saying is that Demon's Souls seems like a bigger project than anything like Housemarque has done. So if I were to pick one of these two, that intuitively seems like the more experienced team to go out there and make some big budget, huge open world, blah 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 game. Yeah, I would assume it's Bluepoint.
Yes,
because Housemarque before Returnal, they hadn't made anything
that substantial.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think,
and it is unfortunate to say, but yeah, if I were to choose between I would choose Bluepoint. I love Housemarque. They're near and dear to some of my favorite games I've played, but they did have a specific niche and a specific style of game that they made, and those were smaller, more intimate arcade type titles.
Yeah.
And that's not to say they couldn't do anything like Returnal. Obviously they did. I think they always had it in them. But unfortunately it comes down to like, you know, which game sold more consistently or what did they provide to us more consistently. And Bluepoint or Sony has provided more to the company than I think Housemarque has. I mean, and we know that because Housemarque was about to go under after Nex Machina.
They said that they wouldn't be able to make those kinds of games anymore. They were going to work on a battle royale game, and then all of a sudden, Sony swooped in and was like, "Hey, we got an idea for you." Yep. I do wonder sometimes if Sony looks at what Microsoft is doing and is going like, They can't sustain that. There's no, and this is something that kind of Sean Layden said, right? Sean Layden. Why do I say Layden? Sean Layden said, is that sort of model's unsustainable. And he sort of said it, you know, on the side of his mouth kind of a way.
Right, yeah.
Because he didn't name them specifically. So maybe this is something that Sony believes in, and they don't think they're going to have to eventually expand more on PC.
Yeah.
Because they know that they think Game Pass isn't sustainable, or that you can't keep charging that low for it or something like that. And they think that, you know, if Xbox keeps putting its games on PC and Xbox, and we at PlayStation have incredible exclusives that come out every 2 years or whatever, then people are going to keep buying PlayStations. And if Xbox isn't a huge threat, well, then that just means people are going to keep buying PlayStation. So it doesn't matter that much anyway, right? Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. People keep buying and always will buy physical games. It's just, and people want to have things. And that is the truth. However, we are in the generations now have decided that they want streaming things. Apple Plus, you know, sure. Yeah. Netflix, Hulu. Yeah. Like, you know, we don't want cable, but here we are subscribing to 10 different things, you know, and obviously with Game Pass, tons of subscribers, and they keep growing because they keep providing good deals. It may not be sustainable. They will raise their prices eventually. No, they will. You
think they'd have to?
Yeah. No. Well, I mean,
you think they'd have to?
PlayStation Plus goes up, and they don't give me shit. You know, like so Xbox goes up, they don't give me anything. So yeah, it's going to happen. But what works now works now. So
okay,
that's what I think.
Twitch has added more account verification to crack down on hate raids. So some background: after a wave of hate raids in recent months, specifically against marginalized and LGBTQ peoples, there were protests held to get Twitch to react more strongly to toxic users and harassment. Hate raids, if you are unfamiliar with the term, people would go into a chat, flood it with hateful messages, with anything from racist, misogynistic, Nazism, all the way to just stupid things, just to troll, whatever. And near the end of the summer, it got really, really bad, and they had a day off Twitch at the beginning of September. Well, this week, Twitch announced it is planning to add a phone verification chat option, as well as expanding on chat options for email verified accounts. To summarize, you can make it, if you're a streamer, that only those who have their accounts via email or phone verified they can talk and chat. Now, that it was that way with email has been expanded, been a little more complicated. With the phone, you can have up to 5 accounts tied to a single phone number, and to help with ban evasion, if one of those accounts is banned site wide, then all of the accounts tied to that phone are also banned. So if you have 5 accounts and on 4 of them you're a normal dude and on 1 of them you're a douche, and you get banned, you're banned on all 5 accounts tied to that phone number. Twitch said this update has actually been a few months in the making, so that would put it before the hate raids, and who knows what they've been doing since. I'm not someone who streams. I'm not someone who is into Twitch or anything like that.
Yeah.
But the reaction to this seemed positive, and so I can't. And until people start to use it, who knows how effective it will be. The one question that I have, though, is how will this grind with engagement? Because one of the issues that I understand, and this is an issue with social media in general, as we've seen with a massive 60 Minutes interview that aired the night before Facebook went offline, engagement drives a lot of visibility on social media, right? On YouTube and whatever. And if you limit the kind of engagement you can get with your content, that's going to limit your audience. So if you're somebody who is of a marginalized group or is LGBTQ, and you decide, okay, I'm going to phone verify my chat, and that limits the type of verification or the type of engagement you can get, because then fewer users are going to be able to chat in your chat, does that mean that's going to lead to lower visibility? That's my question. And that's the thing that I like, because that's the root of a lot of stuff, right? Is, yeah, sure, I can protect myself this way, but now I'm also hindering how the algorithm is going to treat my channel or my stream or whatever.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense.
So that's the question I have. And I didn't see if Twitch answered that or not. And it wouldn't be an easy question to answer. But that's sort of the only question that I would have. And maybe it's something where people are fine with that. They only want 10,000 subscribers. They don't need to go out there and find a bajillion people to watch their streams. So engagement isn't, important to them. Who knows?
There's a lot of angles to it. I'm all for something like this. I'm a big supporter of
of course,
two-factor authentication and stuff like that. And I think that's one thing that you hear a lot of these streamers talk about when, they're speaking to their viewers is, my community, thanks community. Like it's all about you guys. Like you
sure.
guys. And so these folks these viewers who watch these streamers, I'm sure they would do what they need to in order to watch their favorite streamer or help out that favorite streamer. Because the truth is, regardless of the hate raids and all of the negative stuff going on with Twitch, there are a lot more people who, at least maybe I'm being a little naive, yeah. But I feel like there's a lot more good people in this world than there are bad people. Yeah. But so I think that the folks who, it doesn't take that long, and everyone has a phone, so or email address. So I think that there will be. This is the best outcome that I think that they can do for now, because unfortunately, if these guys want to continue to hate rating or they want to do stuff like this, they will find a way eventually.
Yeah.
But I think this is a pretty good stopgap in order to prevent that from happening in the foreseeable future. But, it'll come back around somehow. Like they may switch social media sites, instead of abusing on Twitch, they may go to abusing them on Twitter or something like that.
Which is another whole nother problem.
Right. A whole nother problem that those guys will have to deal with. But for now, for Twitch. I think this is a wonderful solution. I don't know about the hindering engagement. I think that's what I was getting to with the fact that I was talking about the communities and stuff. I think the viewers who really want to see their favorite streamers will do what it takes to do that. And I don't think there will be a hit. I mean, there are a lot of people who can, without an account, view Twitch streamers. But even then, I don't know if you can. I don't think you can interact with the chat anyways. So
I don't think so.
So yeah, I don't know. Well, I guess it's just something that we'll have to see. I'm also with you. I'm not very familiar with Twitch. I have an account on there. I don't really watch anyone though. I only have it for like, if they do special drops or something.
Sure.
For betas or loading screens on Apex or something. So
I mean, and yeah, I'm much more familiar with YouTube, and I think in a similar vein, like the issue with YouTube is if you want to talk about World War II and Joseph Stalin or something like that, you're gonna have to put up with a capricious advertising system that puts huge nets on things and says, well, did you say World War II? Demonetized, right? But yes. If you're someone that wants to talk about history and wants to talk about those things, then it's like you just have to bite that bullet. And it's a problem that probably has a solution, and you would acknowledge as a complicated solution. But I don't think it's impossible. But the thing is, are companies willing to spend a ton of money and manpower to do that, especially if it's cutting into their own easy way of making money, right? And it's funny because speaking of that, the story, the 60 Minutes interview, Frances Hagen, I think her name was, the whistleblower with Facebook that put a bunch of leaked documents,
thousands and thousands,
that showed Facebook sort of knew more than they were letting on to. But anyway, the story she told last night, and by story I don't mean specifically story, but sort of the facts that she shared are a lot of the same things that it's funny, are a lot of the same things we hear about a lot of other social media, right? That algorithms want to deliver things that you use, that you like, right? So it tries to deliver similar things. So if you watch conspiracy theory videos on YouTube, guess what the algorithm is going to try and deliver to you?
Yeah.
And it was more pronounced back in the day than it is now. But that's still sort of the way it works, right? Mm-hmm. You watch one Norm Macdonald video, and all of a sudden, your entire feed is Norm Macdonald's video.
That sucks. Sorry, real quick. That sucks with video games, especially when they just came out, because it's like I'll watch something like, oh, here's some tips you didn't know about Tales of Arise, and then the next time I log on, it's like Tales of Arise ending. Like
I got a hack for you.
Oh no!
Just click those 3 dots. Not interested.
Yeah, well, boom. That you can't do that on your PS5. So
don't use the YouTube browser on PS5. There's my next hack for you. That one's free. That one's free.
I'll take it. Thanks.
But anyway, that's just sort of a rant. It's like engagement and delivering content that the person wants to see are these 2 really simple concepts that are just Pandora's box can of worms, all the cliches, because they just lead to because the incentives to make them good lead to problems, right? Anyway, enough about that. Richard, what's going on at Konami, according to VGC?
So a lot of places reported this, but Video Game Chronicle is what we took it from. So Konami is set to revive the Metal Gear Solid, Silent Hill, and Castlevania series. Is all 3 of those.
We'll take that.
According to anonymous sources, VGC said, quote, following a restructure to the company's game development divisions earlier this year, Konami is now focused on bringing back its biggest brands to the premium games space. There's a lot of revelations here and a good amount of information. I'll try to go through some as best as I can, and I'll add some myself. Castlevania is apparently being reimagined and developed internally by Konami in Japan. Supposedly, this will be the first one to be shown off compared to the next ones that we have here. Metal Gear Solid supposedly is getting a remake of Metal Gear Solid 3 from developer Virtuos, who has done ports for Dark Souls Remaster, Outer Worlds on Switch, BioShock Collection. They've also provided art and content for Battlefield 1, Horizon Zero Dawn, Uncharted 4, so pretty good repertoire. Supposedly, they were originally going to be remaking Metal Gear Solid 3 with the Fox engine.
Oh my God. Don't tell
and
me
they
that.
were also going to reuse assets from the Metal Gear Solid pachinko machine because that's what they use that in the Fox engine. Mm-hmm. But apparently that has been scrapped, and they're just redoing it with the Virtuous studio. And then multiple Silent Hill games are being developed by various external studios, which was something that VGC reported back in February. Apparently, for the Silent Hill, there was a pitch from Supermassive Games, the developers of Until Dawn, that was not greenlit by Konami. That was several years back. But apparently, after the critical failures of Contra Rogue Core and Metal Gear Survive, Konami has been reportedly more willing to outsource its franchises to other developers, which is something should have done a long time ago. We'll see what happens with this. I know you have your opinions on Konami and what they've been going through the last couple of years, and you're shaking your head, so you got something to say. It sounds like, looks like.
So, all right, have you watched The Office? Do you watch The Office?
No, I have not watched The Office.
There's a character named Ryan, right?
Okay.
And Ryan is a douche, all right? And then there's an episode where Ryan says, I could run GM, but I don't know how to fix a truck, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I know how this sounds. I could run Konami, but I don't know how to make a video game. And what I mean by this is it feels like, and this is something similar to what I said last week. If you were the coach of the Lakers and you know nothing about basketball except that LeBron James is the best player in the world, you could at least approach the game and go, okay, well, here's what I know. So why don't we just let LeBron go out and play and we might win, right? So if I were the head of Konami and I knew nothing about that corporate structure or how it worked, at least I could say, maybe we could put a studio to make a Metal Gear Solid remake and it'll sell because that's just an obvious idea. Right? So I don't know where the disconnect is between these obvious decisions and what... And I know Konami is focused on like pachinko machines and shit in Japan and whatever. It's fine, I guess.
Their biggest draw is Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually, or one of their biggest draws is like Yu-Gi-Oh! And card games and stuff. So
it's just frustrating. It's just frustrating if you care about video games to see these franchises wasting away for no other reason but a company just sort of lost interest. Yeah. And there's no reason to lose interest because it's not like these are forgotten franchises that aren't going to make any money.
People are begging for these franchises to come back. And I think that's what's great to hear about the shakeup that they apparently had earlier this year. So hopefully this is exactly what's the reason why it's we're getting this information. But yeah, no, like one of the biggest franchises, Marvel, obviously, Spider-Man, the movie rights are owned by Sony. Yeah. But both Sony and Marvel came to an agreement. Yeah, right, sure. Sony, for like 2 times, has tried to like make the Spider-Man, and they couldn't get it fully correct, except for the first time, for at least the first 2 movies. But they couldn't get it going, so Marvel was like, hey, look, why don't you... We'll do a movie. You can get some of the money. You get some of the money. Like, it's simple. Like, Konami literally does not have to do anything. They have to write on sign on a piece of paper, shake a hand, and then if your game from another studio that gets licensed out becomes a hit, you get to sit back and make the money. I don't know how contracts work, but that's what it sounds like. Sure. When you license out something, that's and you can like send somebody else doing it, and I'll get a kickback. Some
empty suit onto a stage.
Right.
Gameplay is our passion at Konami. Oh, so sorry, I just hit your computer. Some shit like that. Something, right. Yeah. Anyway, I was gonna say. I think probably another thing that spurs this is that in recent years there's been remakes of older games, and it's been successful. And we got the Resident Evil remakes, and we're getting a Dead Space remake. Yep. And we've gotten remasters and all kinds of stuff. And you can't, I don't know. Okay, I'm not going to compare it to I'll just compare it to movies, right? If they remade the same movie every 5 years, which, hey, Marvel movies, hey-oh. No. Yeah. If they remade the same movie every 5 years or every 10 years, right? People would lambaste it as lazy and dumb and all that stuff, right? But you can do that in games because games are a different medium where things age a lot faster. Yeah. So we are not that far removed from the original Dead Space.
Well, how long has it been?
I think it's 2008.
Okay. All right. So I use this example for a customer who came into my store. Yes, I'm talking about my job again.
Hey-o.
2000 Metal Gear Twin Snakes for the GameCube. 2002, 2003, maybe?
Sure.
Okay. Regardless. That's now almost 20 years. So in that 20 years, there are new people being born who are now 20 years old who has never played that game.
Yeah.
So your chances of getting more sales have exponentially gone up. So it makes sense to remake these games.
And these companies just there's all kinds of things that are just sitting in lockers or in storage somewhere that there's all these IPs and things they could remake. And I understand in some ways it gets complicated because you don't know who owns the rights, licensing or couple companies have different rights, and we can land on the moon, or at least we did in 1969, but we can't figure out who owns the rights to some stupid song. So it's like we just shove it in a vault for all eternity. So I understand that there's complicated legalese in some cases, but in other cases, it's just like, I don't see why this isn't taken advantage of more often. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, we just have to wait a little longer and see if this is true.
And maybe partially it's because, if you ask Bobby Kotick, it's like, well, we make $1 gajillion off of Call of Duty every year. Do we really need to spend resources to make a new... I can't think of an Activision franchise that isn't made anymore, but do we really need to spend resources to bring this back, because we're making so much money over here. Yeah. But it's like, well, that's a sucky mentality to have because people want good games and there's no reason not to do it except you need to make money off of this shit you're already making money off of.
And you don't have anything at that point, you don't have anything to fall back on. Sure, Call of Duty may be the biggest thing every year, but at some point that might end, So you have to think of something else to continue on. Anyways.
Yeah. You ready for tidbits?
Let's go tidbits.
A man discusses the news, but not like the big news, the little news. Little bit. This is the tidbits.
Got some Tokyo Game Show news.
Hey!
So there's a good amount of stuff here, but bunch of announcements. Monster Hunter Rise is getting a new expansion, Sunbreak. That's coming out in summer 2022. That was actually announced at the Nintendo Direct last week. But who cares? Speaking of choices in games, we were talking about in Cyberpunk earlier, Sega revealed that Sin Chronicle, a mobile RPG, you can only make decisions once and influence the ending, or the ending is something you choose. Really wild, but we'll see how that one turns out. Tango Gameworks is working on a new game led by Evil Within 2 director John Johannes. And then it says right here, there's a note from you. It says, I need to play Evil Within already. The first one is good. Lacking. Second one, phenomenal. Okay. I saved this one for last because I want to talk about it a little bit.
Okay.
Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin is getting a March 18, 2022 release. And I'm sure you've seen... have you seen anything from it?
I haven't.
Okay.
Well, no, I haven't. No.
Okay. So they released a second demo for it because there was the first demo when they first announced the game last year. And people were going wild over it because of how unabashedly edgy it was. so these three main characters who by the way, the main character, complete default male character, and his name is Jack.
Okay. Awful. Interesting.
So I'm just gonna move on. The second demo, go through the game, it plays like Dark Souls, Neo, but in the Final Fantasy universe, which is really neat. Yeah, cool idea.
Interesting.
There comes a part in the cutscene where you encounter a female character and you help her defeat everyone or whatever enemy is there. She begins to tell you the story of what's going on. And she's very sad because everyone's dying. Everything's, the world is in ruins. And she goes, and that's why, we need heroes. And she's all somber and stuff. And after she's done telling the story, the camera goes to the main character's face for 4 seconds and he's not saying anything. And then he just goes, bullshit. Turns around, and as he's turning around, I shit you not, Tyler, we'll watch the clip afterwards, pulls out his phone, hits whatever it taps the phone, immediately starts blasting Limp Bizkit and walks away.
Is this real?
This literally is. This happens in the.
Why would this happen?
I couldn't tell you, man. But this game will survive off being a meme, and it's going to be a hit. I tell you what. So. Go check. The demo's on PS5 if you want to check it out.
Hey, if at the end I get Limp Bizkit, then why wouldn't I?
Well, I got a couple reasons. Ghost of Tsushima wins Game of the Year along with Monster Hunter Rise at Tokyo Game Show 2020 or 2021. I'm sorry. Ghost of Tsushima released last year, of course. Yeah. However, Japan recognizes games released from April of 2020 to March of 2021. So that's their
that's their year. It's like a fiscal year almost.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Monster Hunter Rise won the grand prize reward, which is essentially Game of the Year as well. So they both basically tied for that. So that's enough with the TGS news. Jeff Grubb believes that Nintendo will release a remaster of Metroid Prime 1 instead of the much more desired Metroid Prime trilogy. On Twitter, Jeff Grubb stated, which, by the way, Jeff Grubb is a noted, I think he's a journalist. But
yeah, no one really knows what journalism is what it's called. Journalism.
Oh, yes. I didn't know there was an actual word.
Well, no, I just made it up. We'll just say journalism.
Okay. Yeah, no,
I think I made that up. I think I made it up. I don't know if anyone's actually said it.
You heard it here first. But yes, he leaks a lot of things or provides tips or whatever. But on Twitter, Jeff Grubb stated, I think that Nintendo will re-release Metroid Prime 1 on Switch instead of Trilogy. It has been It has been working on oh my God, hit the thing.
I like a
reset. You're good.
Da cha-cha.
Oh my God.
I like a da cha-cha.
Do we need to cut to commercial?
We can't do that. It has been worked on for most of this year. When I first heard, everyone, including me, assumed it was the trilogy. But apparently it's Metroid Prime 1. And that's disappointing because Metroid Prime Trilogy obviously would be a great deal, first off. Sure, yeah. But a great introduction into a lot of the series for a lot of folks. But chances are Nintendo will charge $50+ for this thing. Christopher Judge, who we spoke about earlier, voices and acts as Kratos, revealed that God of War Ragnarok was delayed because of him. Judge revealed that during 2019, he required surgery to replace both of his hips, along with having surgery on his back and knee surgery. As a result, Sony Santa Monica waited for his recovery and rehab. And I wish him well. But
I wish him well. But it is funny imagining Kratos getting a hip replacement. Just like, listen, boy, I'm going to be under.
Anyway. Come back in a couple months.
Yeah, boy. Exactly. It's like, what kind of anesthesia would they need for Kratos? It's like they do the normal thing and Kratos is just sitting on the table and he's just like perfectly fine, and they just like have to crank up the nozzle or whatever to really throw in the anesthesia. Just nothing's working. That'd be hilarious. That's like a video gamey Saturday Night Live. Like, Kratos needs surgery, but they can't put him under because he's too strong.
Yeah, he's a god. Sorry. You know. Yeah. No, that's all right. Last tidbit of the night, Bandai Namco has a new logo, and it's awful. I won't show it to you. Go Google it yourself.
Wait, was one more time? What was it?
Bandai Namco has a new logo, and it's terrible.
Okay, this is going to be a live reaction.
Okay.
I hope you can hear the typing.
Of the dead?
New logo. Is that the new logo? Oh, yeah, that is kind of... That's not fun.
They paid a marketing company $2 million just to type out something in Word.
Oh man! Now all of a sudden I feel bad for Bandai Namco, even though I really don't care. Oh well,
that's all right. They're making their money anyways.
Yeah, they probably don't give a shit about me. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse. We have a video of a review of the Pathless coming up. Hopefully tomorrow. I should have said that at the beginning of the show.
I hope so. Yeah.
And then we'll have a few other videos in the next week or so. And without further ado, we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.